If Boris Johnson can look in the mirror every morning and think he's a good person, then you can at least give yourself a fucking break and believe in yourself a bit. I don't know where I'm finding these quotes from, but I believe these quotes are finding me. How are you? How are you all doing? It's Toya with the Toya Talks podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for joining me today. So we have a dilemma. So I have given the email address, and I will put it again in the episode description of anybody who wants to reach out to me with a dilemma, and we can discuss it on the Toy Talks podcast in the dilemma section. So this dilemma actually came to me through my Instagram. So just please bear with me a minute, because it came in like bits, and I'm trying to put it together. I've been trying to put it together, and hopefully I have done that. Hi Toya, your podcast has been my lifeline. I have an ongoing issue at work and was wondering if you could spare some words of wisdom. So, I put in a grievance against a colleague, and the decision came back very wishy-washy. She acknowledged the comments made on several occasions, but says I didn't mean it that way. For example, I speak funny. One time she asked me if I knew what dainty means. Her daughter said to her on Children in Need Day, after my colleague had braided her hair and sprayed it multiple colours. The theme was crazy hair. This colleague then came to the office and said her daughter had said she has crazy hair just like people from Africa. This was the first time I pulled her up on it. I asked her if she was teaching her daughter that Africans have crazy hair and not normal hair. Anyways, I had brought all my concerns to my direct line manager, who would tell me she is going through a lot at home, please bear with her, or I'm sure she didn't mean it that way. I eventually suggested an informal meeting to allow us to discuss this, as it was really starting to get to me. In the meeting, she told me I was unapproachable and aggressive. I asked her where her findings were coming from, as I had never had miscommunication or misunderstanding with her or anyone in the office. She replied that it is how I feel. I asked her to retract that, as it was unfounded and was upsetting. She replied, "Oh well, that's how I feel." I then said, "I feel you are boxing me in as an angry black woman." Immediately, she stood up and shouted, "I will not stand for you calling me racist." And she walked out and left the meeting and left the office. From there, I put in my grievance. As mentioned, she acknowledged that she said what she said, but didn't mean it in that way. But she has been told that those comments are inappropriate. Further to that, the investigating manager ended by saying that the comment of me saying that I felt boxed as an angry black woman was inappropriate. The grievance was not upheld, even though the lady admitted to most of the things that she said. That is where I'm at. I'm torn, broken. Do I stand for what's right and let her know she's inappropriate in herself? Or do I just let it be and be grateful I have a job? And then I asked this young lady, what is the desired outcome? What outcome do you want? And she said, I wanted her to acknowledge that her comments were inappropriate and give me the respect I deserve. I sent her a voice note, and she then decided to speak to ACAS. I've spoken about ACAS in my Toya Talks live in 2018. If you don't know what ACAS is, please do your Googles. This dilemma is a bit of a difficult one, and I'll tell you why. I've said it all the time on my Snapchat. As black women, I feel like the workplace dehumanizes us, and therefore they don't recognize that we have feelings, and that's fine. Because when you're dealing with these people who are usually white middle class, in a construct like the workplace that has been built for them, you need to know how to speak to them. And there's no point using emotions. There's no point, because emotions are relative to how you feel, and they're relative to you, and they may be justified, but you cannot expect a white person to understand what it feels like to be discriminated against because of their race. You can't expect white people to know how it feels to be typecast, stereotyped to the angry black women. They're not going to understand that. So when you're communicating with them, you need to communicate to them in the level in which they're going to understand. So if we break this down a little bit, I don't think this young lady handled it very well, and I told her, and I don't think she was happy with how I responded, but it was the truth. You came looking for the advice, I'm going to give you the advice. You can see that this young lady is very articulate. She's very strong, and I was really, really proud of her for asserting herself, because before we get into how I think that she should have dealt with it, I think we need to respect the fact that as a black woman, she still used her voice, because there's many black women that continue to be oppressed and feel like they don't have a voice and then tolerate crap and don't say anything. And then it messes with their mental health. It messes with their ability to be able to do their job. So let's give respect to where it's due to this young lady, because at least she asserted herself. Did she do it in the right way, in my opinion? No, she didn't. Now, again, you can set boundaries in the workplace, but there is always the token one person that is going to breach those boundaries. And it could be because they live in Surbiton, where there's not a lot of white people, not a lot of black people, but a lot of white people. And then when they come to London to work, they see black people and they don't know how to act. Now, if I was in that situation and the woman made a comment about her child saying about African hair or whatnot, do you know what I would have done? As I've always told you guys, I would have started creating a burn folder, I'm not sensitive to when white people are throwing these loose things around. I'm not sensitive to it. Shall I tell you why? Because I think I've experienced so much racism, I'm immune. So I realised that being sensitive to it is not going to resolve it. What will resolve it is making sure I deal with them on a level in which they never see me coming. I would have made a note of it. And then I would have sent an email to the colleague to the effect of, "Hi Sharon, I thought that it would be prudent of me to send you a message. There was a comment that you made in the office and I found it really disrespectful." And then I would have quoted the comment. I say, "Going forward, can you be a bit mindful that not only am I African, I'm also a black woman. And when you are making comments about Africans or black women's hair, those comments affect me. And going forward, can you please be a bit mindful about the words and the language that you're using to communicate to members of staff in the office, full stop." And however she would have responded, I wouldn't have responded back. I would have just put it in my burn folder. And somebody like that is going to do it again. After the second time, that's now a pattern. Then what I would have done is send an email to my line manager with HR on copy. Because Oyibo people, when the HR is on copy, they get uncomfortable. And the essence of that is you're giving your manager that due respect, because you're sending it to her, but the CC is HR. So the reason for the CC being HR is so HR are aware of what's happening. HR can't turn around and say they didn't know. But equally, it's still informal in nature because you're directing the email to the line manager. And in the email to the line manager, I will write, "Hi Claire, please find attached previous incidents that have occurred between me and Sharon. I am bringing this to your attention because now there is a pattern of behaviour that Sharon is exhibiting that has racial undertones in nature. As we are working in an organisation that is multicultural, I think there needs to be respect for different cultures and different races. I have previously spoken to Sharon about some of the conversations and language that she uses, which I, as a black woman, as a black African black woman, find very disrespectful. Going forward, I have asked Sharon to be mindful of those conversations that she has and to be aware of the fact that I am affected by those conversations. I would ask you to please have a discussion with Sharon about this. Please find attached examples of conversations that she's had whereby I have had to draw her attention to how detrimental they are. I would ask that feedback is given once this conversation has been had. Full stop. Then if your manager wants to call you all in a meeting or whatever, because that's usually what they will do, isn't it? Because they want to settle it. They'll call you into a meeting. I wouldn't even talk much because I've already made it clear what she said. There's email trail. You create an audit trail of this discrimination. And remember, I've told you, you need to start keeping burn folders. Because when white people move mad, they don't remember. So it's better that you keep a burn folder, you have a chronology there. And it shows that you have tried to informally resolve it between the both of you. The girl didn't want to hear, no problem. You're now asking your manager to use her managerial management to deal with it. Then you go to, say you have this informal meeting and Sharon is there. Sharon will be doing blah, 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 and she wants to walk out. Cool. Oh, you're calling me a racist. Let her move mad. At the end of that meeting, you will now decide what you want to do. Your manager is not going to resolve it in that meeting because clearly Sharon is wrong and strong. Cool. It's at that point that you make a decision. If you feel disrespected, if you feel all those things, if you know that Sharon is, your boss is siding with Sharon against you or whatever the case is, then you can do a formal grievance complaint. In that formal grievance complaint, you will talk about the meeting that you had with her where your manager was present. You will then attach those two examples showing a propensity for Sharon to behave in a discriminatory way. And then in that same email, you say what you would like the grievance outcome to be. You have to tell them. Now, I'm just going to pause there for a moment. Do you remember in this dilemma, I asked the young lady, what is the desired outcome? What outcome do you want? She said, initially, she wanted to get the respect she deserves. It's too emotive. I'm so sorry. You may think you deserve respect, but remember what I've always said. Black people, before they hear you, they see you. And some people have this ingrained racism in them that they're never going to respect you. It's not going to happen. I remember in one of my past employments, I, obviously a contract manager, I was dealing with a couple of contracts, and there was a particular contract I was dealing with that one of the salespeople wanted to do something that was contractually unacceptable. So I emailed the salesperson back and I said, from a contractual point of view, you can't do this because of X, Y, Z. She then put a meeting in my diary. I went to the meeting. As I went into the meeting, it was her and a junior member of staff. So this young lady, before I could say a word, started shouting. As she was shouting, I was just there looking at her. And then I repeated the contractual advice I gave the young lady. I said, you can't contractually do this because of X, Y, Z. She goes, before I could finish, she goes, oh, that's fucking rubbish. That's fucking ridiculous. Your advice is fucking ridiculous. I closed my notepad. I said, you have no right to swear at me. None whatsoever. This meeting is finished. I closed the laptop, I closed my notebook, and I walked out. I was fuming. But I said, listen, at the end of the day, if I'm going to deal with this girl, I'm going to deal with her squarely. What this girl doesn't know is I've already got email exchanges between the both of us that I've kept where she was being disrespectful and quite rude because she wants to get this deal on this particular contract and she can't do it the way she wants to. And in those email exchanges, I have gone back to her and said, Beth, you can't speak to me in this way. This is disrespectful. You know, there's an audit trail. I created an audit trail. So I already had my folder. I knew that Beth was coming with her madness. Do you know what I did? I wrote an email to my line manager summarizing that meeting I just had where Beth now basically swore at me several times. And then I attached all the evidence of the previous exchanges. Yeah? I also attached an email between me and a junior member of staff that was in that meeting. And in that exchange, I said to the girl, Jade, Beth's behavior was completely unacceptable. I said, I hope that you wasn't as uncomfortable as I was with her swearing. Then Jade wrote back to me. She goes, her swearing was out of order. All I needed in that exchange is for Jade to acknowledge the swearing. That's it. I didn't really care how she felt. I also used that exchange. I attached it to the email to my boss. Do you know, a few days went past, my boss didn't do nothing. You know what I did? I then forwarded it to HR, innit? Because HR was on copy. Then I forwarded it to HR with my boss then on CC. To cut a long story short, myself and Beth had a meeting with HR where I had already told them what I wanted out of that meeting. I want a written apology. I want assurances that that type of behavior will not happen or manifest itself to me or any member of my team. And thirdly, what I wanted was it to go on the girl's file, because now I've made it formal, innit? Do you know that during that meeting, HR tried to tell me that Beth didn't swear at me. She swore at the situation. I turned to HR, I said, excuse me. Whether she swore at the situation, whether she swore directly at me, whether she swore behind me, whether she swore 10 seconds ago, the fact is she still swore, and therefore it was disrespectful. And I'm entitled to tell you how it made me feel. I'm entitled to tell you because you wasn't there, I was there, and Beth was there. I said, what's already been admitted is that she swore several times at me, because she didn't swear at the junior member of staff. Therefore, it was at me. When I said that, when I say backed off, I said, if this is not resolved here, I will be taking this to the head of HR and I will be involving senior management, which includes the CEO. I weren't playing with them. As a result of that meeting, not only did I get a verbal apology, I got a written apology and assurances in that written apology that that behavior will never manifest itself again to me or any member of my team. I also got an apology from HR for their misinterpretation of what happened. And that my grievance complaint went on that girl's file. Because her abusive behavior didn't just start then. It's been happening for some time. It's just, the difference is now she was in a room where she directed and she had the cheek when she was swearing to point her bent index finger at me. I said to myself, you'll pay for it. And she did. Ever since then, it's like somebody poured ice water on her. When she deals with me on a different level. What do you mean? Respect has been inserted in that relationship. And HR now realized that I'm not the one. You see some parallels between the situation that happened with me a few years ago and the dilemma. If you're expecting through a grievance that the person will be sacked, I can help you to understand that the likelihood of that is very slim. Very, very slim. I don't know what it is. I can only conclude it's because they're white. The HR in my situation was justifying the disrespectful and deplorable behavior by another member of staff. And in this girl's dilemma, the line manager, even in the grievance, they didn't uphold the girl's grievance. They were like, oh, she's going through stuff. There's always an excuse. But why is it that there is never an appreciation from human resources? Remember, human resources, but I've never seen human resources resource humans in the workplace. I've never seen it though. They don't do their job properly. But why is it that they don't assume that black women are also going through things? Do you know why? Because they dehumanize black women and therefore don't associate any type of emotion when it comes to black women. We don't feel anything. We just exist. We just is, which is bullshit. White women are allowed to weaponize their tears, weaponize their emotions. White women in the workplace are always going through something. They're always going through something. And for me personally, I don't entertain that excuse. Because just because I don't bring all my problems from outside into the office doesn't mean I'm not going through something. It just means I'm good at separating work and life. Yes, that is the truth. That's the reality. But you've got to know the people that you're dealing with here. You've got to come with facts. And you've got to take the emotion out of it. Because if you already accept that these people do not accept or appreciate that we go through stuff or we have emotions, then why are you bringing your emotion to be interpreted by somebody who doesn't understand that black women have emotions? Keep your emotion out the door. Stick to the facts. You're now saying that you want that outcome to be that get the respect you deserve. That's neither here nor there, because if you don't even have the respect of your colleague, they haven't even upheld your complaint. They're now telling you that it's wrong for you to say that you feel as if you're being boxed as an angry black woman. They're even telling you that was not acceptable for you to say. That's some bullshit. But what does that show you? It shows you that they don't actually acknowledge that this woman's done anything wrong, because they're justifying it by the fact that she's going through stuff. And I think that had you dealt with it in the way I have advised, the outcome may have been a bit more different and you would have had a bit more leverage. So the young lady has basically said to me, she came back to me and told me that her complaint hadn't been upheld and therefore she has an opportunity to appeal. And she spoke to ACAS. And obviously she's going to appeal it. But I just want to say, yes, she can appeal it. Obviously she can. But if the results are the same, then what's she going to do? Because the likelihood is the result is going to be the same. Do you know why? Because it's the same people that are going to hear the appeal that probably heard the first complaint in the first place. Let's be real. But when you make a complaint, you've got to think of this as well. When you're thinking of making any type of complaint, what is the impact going to be? Because there's always an impact. And it could frustrate the relationship between you and your manager. There are a list of impacts that could happen. The reality is, I mean, even in my situation, I measured it and weighed it up and I thought I can deal with the impact. And just because there is going to be an impact doesn't mean that you shouldn't complain, especially if you know that this is completely unacceptable and you won't be able to move forward with your employment unless this is resolved. So that's how that young lady has decided to deal with it. She used me, I think, more as a sounding board, and she's going to do a second stage appeal and hopefully get the result that she wants. But I don't actually know what the result is that she wants, because I said to her, if you do a second appeal, you need to make clear what you want. And it can't be, I want her to respect me. You know, it could be a formal apology. You could ask for it to go in her file, a written apology. You know, you need to almost take HR on a journey, because HR, for all intents and purposes, all they do is paper shuffle, because I don't actually know what human resources do. And even when they're paper shuffling, they still make mistakes. But you have to be strategic here. If you know that this is an organization where you want to progress, you have to know that how far you can take certain things before you are reasonable about what you expect as a result, if that makes sense. I definitely think that it's important that if you are going to make a complaint, that you make it clear at what stage you're at. So if it's informal, in the subject box, write informal discussion, But you have to make sure that you've got burn folders, you've got examples, that you are able to demonstrate a propensity, a pattern of behavior. Fourthly, in the situation that I was in, I knew there'd come a point where I'd have to withdraw, because I can't go for broke or go for blood, and the going for blood is I want her to be sacked. The reality is they're not going to. There needs to be a conversation that's had with yourself where you accept that she's never going to get sacked. But you can make a point without having to go to an extreme. You cannot single-handedly eradicate racism and discrimination in the workplace. It's not. You are not going to be the person that removes it, because in society, it is endemic in our society. You've got the Prime Minister of the country making certain comments that, to be quite honest with you, represents what a majority of white people in this country think. Then you now think that in this country you're going to single-handedly remove racism? No, you can't. It's actually not possible. But what you can do is be smart about how you navigate a racist construct to get what you want. There has to be a level of strategy. And I keep using it. I think most episodes of it, you've got to be strategic. You can still make a point and know how to withdraw. Because you see, in that situation that I gave you with Beth will now take her experience and go to tell the other salespeople, you see that Toya, be careful how you deal with her, she's not going to accept that rubbish. This is what happened. She'll have to go and confess, because it's already gone to HR. Because sometimes you need to use one as an example to teach all. And that is exactly what I did, because the people in the sales team generally were moving mad. Do you understand? But it just happens to be that Beth wanted to show her ass. So if I make an example of her, she'll go back and tell everybody else. And what will happen is they will all now fall in line. And that's exactly what happened. Beth fell in line, and everybody else in that team fell in line when it came to me. And it made my employment in that particular organization a lot more peaceful. I'm not having to now deal with disrespect. I've set the boundaries. This is how far you guys can come with me. You better know that I'm very ready to go to HR. Be ready to know that I'm coming with that evidence. And they will just deal with you differently because you've made an example of one and you've taught the rest. But you have to know also when to withdraw. You've got to know, okay, you know what? I've made my point now. Back off now. I think that you have to be very, very careful with certain things that you say in, and I say, but certain things that you say and certain things that you write. So when you say, this young lady, she goes, I feel like you're typecasting me or stereotyping me as an angry black woman. Now, the issue with that sentence is I feel, because initially I told you guys, leave your feelings at the door. But I feel like that's something that she could have written down in the complaint rather than say it to her. Because one thing with white people, not all white people, some white people, is when you call them out on their racism, they get mad. Oh my God, I'm not a racist. My best friend's black. Oh, I'm not a racist. My next door neighbor, she's black. Oh, how dare you call me racist? I know a lot of black people. They really think that knowing black people absolves them from being racist. And they don't like being called out on racism because now you're putting a name on it. And what the word racist denotes, the history that comes with the word racism is more than they can handle. So I feel like there's certain things that you can write or allude to without, if you feel like you're being typecast as an angry black woman, then in that email you could say, I felt, not the felt. It came across as there was a perceived stereotype by Sharon that I am an angry black woman. If you feel the need to say that. But let us not do Malcolm X in the office. You have to speak the language they understand to get what you want. You can't go for broke. It's not a war. And it is a silent battle that you are having to participate in. So that was the dilemma. Like I said, I felt like this young lady wanted to use me as a sounding board, which is fine. I gave my advice. I felt like the way she dealt with it in the beginning is different, and she's now in too deep for me to now tell her what to do because she's gone ahead and she's written all these things. And I don't think in this particular dilemma it was for me to give her advice. It was for me to give her my opinion and let her know that I'm proud of her as a black woman for asserting herself. These are the things I probably wouldn't have done. These are the things that I have done in the past that have worked for me. And these are things to think about. And hopefully she will keep me updated on the result of her second stage appeal. And I think it's something that we can all learn from here. I hope you guys have taken some nuggets out of what I've said to you here on this particular episode for this particular dilemma. And I'm not beginning to say that it's easy as black women to navigate the social aspects of work. But what I'm saying is the blueprint is the same, because what I tend to find with white people who are oppressive in the workplace, their MO is all the same. They don't deviate from what they know. So they all do the same thing. What needs to be different is how we approach it. And I don't believe in approaching things head on. I'm patient. Because if you know that you're dealing with somebody who has a propensity to behave in a certain way, the likelihood is they'll continue to behave like that. And as long as you can demonstrate evidence and use the rules and the policies of that organisation, you can deal with that person and still have a smile on your face as you do it. I want to say thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you so much for listening to this dilemma. Next week, we'll have another dilemma. As you know, and as I've said before in my previous episode, I'm taking a break, and part of that break has meant that I didn't want to kind of go away without leaving you guys with some episodes. So I've pre-recorded some dilemmas that will be going up on my podcast. I'm currently sorting out the Toy Talks Live 2.0, which is my second live event. I'm hoping you guys will be able to attend. Please keep a lookout on my social media for the announcement of the date and when the tickets will go live. And once the tickets are gone, they're gone. I just want to say, in 2018, when I had a Toy Talks Live, the tickets sold out 2 weeks before the live event. So that will go to show you how in demand the tickets are. Now, if you want to keep following me on social media, or if you want to follow me, on social media, or keep the conversation going, follow me on Twitter, Toya_W, with the hashtag Toya Talks. Of course, you can follow me on my social media handles, Instagram, Toya_Talks, or Toya_Washington. Thank you so much for joining me for my latest episode of the Toy Talks podcast, and thank you so much for listening to the dilemma. Let me know if you learned anything. Let me know what you have learned. If you want to share with your dilemmas with me, the email address is in the description box of this episode. Save the date. My second live event is coming. The announcement has been made on my social media platform, all of the social media platforms, and I'm making the announcement here on the Toy Talks podcast. The Toy Talks Live 2.0 will take place in London on the 11th of July 2020. Tickets will go live on Eventbrite on the 28th of March 2020. Make sure you look out for the announcements and live links to tickets on my social media platforms. My Twitter is, of course, Toya_W, hashtag Toya Talks. My Instagram page is Toya_Washington. The Toy Talks podcast Instagram page is Toya_Talks. And my Snapchat handle is Toya Washington. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Toy Talks podcast. My name is Toya Washington, and you have, of course, been listening to the Toy Talks podcast.